Good morning, it's Tamika Chambers, and thank you for listening to Create a Generational Love Cycle. So today is March 29th, 2024, and we are approaching the door of April. About to close the door on March and approach or enter the month of April. So I don't know if I've shared with you, but I do have a birthday at the end of this month, March 31st. My mother shared with me that my grandmother, who is 95 years old, when she was pregnant, my mother was pregnant with me in 1975. She told her she was going to have an Easter baby. I was actually born the Monday after Easter. And it took approximately 49 years for me to actually celebrate, to my knowledge, celebrate my birthday on Easter. Now, I don't recall if ever my birthday fell on it, and my mother, but it took 49 years, I think, for me to actually celebrate a birthday on Easter. So it's actually pretty exciting. For me, I kind of I do look for um, what's the message, the underlying spiritual message. It's often what I've used when I was watching television shows, when I listen to people, observe their behaviors, try to look for what's that spiritual message in there. And so, one of the things that definitely comes to mind is rebirth, or a rising, if you will. So just kind of putting that there in my subconscious mind. But I hope all is going well with you. It's Friday. And as you know, Friday is something that came across is, Friday is the day where often, the trash collectors come and collect our trash, right? They come and do that final run. Usually in Oregon, we'd have them to come on Tuesday, and then they would actually come on Friday in case you had extra trash that you needed to get rid of. And I've talked about this before. I believe that many of us are walking around with extra weight, extra things that we need to actually unload, to get rid of, to let go. Whatever terminology, remove the weeds. I've talked about that in cultivation of our inner garden, that often there are traditions, that really are not geared towards individuality. Traditions that can keep a lot of people locked up in an emotional, mental prison, right? Because I've said you don't have to be in a physical prison, but emotional one. And often we incur emotional, mental prison before we actually have a physical one. There are emotions and feelings: anger, resentment, vengeance, shame, guilt, anxiety. We see that in the millions or thousands, of mental health diagnoses that we get a year. Many people are dealing with some form of mental health turmoil, if you will, emotional turmoil. And often I found out that a lot of that lies in our childhood, whether it was something having to do with abuse, neglect, not feeling loved, not feeling valued, not feeling like you have a voice, that you can share what's going on, your concerns. Um, and often, too, our coping mechanisms. How do we cope? Did we did we just agree to whatever somebody else wanted to do? Did we hold in our feelings and our emotions? And now we're dealing with obesity, being overweight, because we tend to hold stuff in, and anytime we want to speak, instead of speaking, we fill our body with stuff and just kind of hold stuff in. And that becomes our safety net. I remember when I was living in Missouri, and I had gotten up to 166 pounds from working, working and not working out, because I was actually working a 10-hour, usually a 10-hour shift, 10 or 11-hour shift. And I was sitting down the whole day, but I wasn't working out. And when I actually lost the weight, I felt like I was just vulnerable or open. I felt like I could literally feel that I was less than what I was, and it was that moment as I was walking up the steps to my apartment, that I realized that I was holding on to a lot of stuff still, right? And since then, I have not been up, to that weight. I've actually lost a lot of weight, but it was actually that pivotal moment about letting go, letting things go. Because you think you have, and things continually happen. Every day we have experiences. Every day there's some thought or opinion or something that can drop into our fertile soil. And we have to continually assess our inner garden, our minds, and say, okay, what is it that is still in my soul? What is it that's growing? What is this anger that I'm feeling? Why did I go off on my child? Why did I withhold something from myself? Why am I not doing this? Why am I rushing around? Why do I have a headache? Why am I suffering migraines? Why am I 100 pounds overweight? Why am I underweight? Why am I not eating consistently? I know I should. Why am I not sleeping consistently, quality sleep? I know I should. Many of what, and Louise Hay talked about it, Florence Scovel Shinn talked about it. You can find it in James Allen, you can find it in Wayne Dyer. And many of them talked about that emotional turmoil that eventually becomes physical. And then when we have a diagnosis, like a mental health diagnosis, then it's almost like you're labeled with that. Your anxiety, you are angry, you are, afraid, fearful, you are shame. And we walk around as if, the scarlet letter, we walk around with basically that brand on us, that we are this diagnosis, instead of being this divine spirit, instead of being this powerful spirit or powerful being that is noted in the Course of Miracles, that Marion Williams talked about it too as well. So when we're talking about Friday, and actually we should be actually doing cleaning, if you will, of our garden. And I wanted to make sure Marianne Williamson is who I was talking about regarding the Course of Miracles and her talking about that book. But when we daily, we should be, it's a pivotal to assess our inner garden. But Friday can be the day before Monday, because as you know, I on Fulfill Your Divine Purpose, I talk about heart to heart. Mondays, I do usually will talk about something that often many of us are many people are dealing with. And Mondays is the pick day. Mondays are the pick day where people often have cardiac events. And I was doing the heart to heart, and I said, Friday before the weekend, because instead of letting things kind of settle in on the weekend, and you burn with anger, burn with rage, you're worried about your following week, you don't want to go to work. It's like, okay, whatever it is that we need to get rid of, then we need to do that Friday, because we should be able to enjoy our weekends. And that's what I thought. Weekends are for family, enjoying, preparing for the week, one day of relaxation, and really tuning in to our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, our energy. And so it should not be, for me, spending time being frustrated and angry. I've been there. And then you feel like your whole weekend is gone, and you think about what you could have, should have did, and then that just kind of continues that cycle of guilt and anger and depression, inner sadness towards yourself, when we deserve a lot better than that. And so what I'd like to talk about today is tradition. And one of the things that I have experienced in my life with my children, a 10-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy, is when you look at the ideal of school, of education, actually education. And growing up, going to school, as a young girl, I was excited because, after I had gone through some experiences with pain, and someone said that day I learned in school, and I was in grade school, I maybe in first or second grade, And I heard that the word personal space and how we all um, have the right to our personal space. And I love that. I actually love that. And I thought, what else can I learn? So instead of school being this place to get away, school became this fun place to learn. And over the years, I would make friends. It was in pretty much in high school where I started experiencing some bullying and some on and off, relationships as far as friends. And I got to a point that I realized, what else could I be doing with my time? Um, and then I went to college, and then it brings me to where I am today, or actually a couple of years ago, 4 years ago to be exact, during COVID, where in 2019, my children, I would look at them and this was like my son's third school and my daughter's like second school in the state, third school within the last year. And I looked at them and I could see that just kind of distraught look on their faces. My daughter got to a point that she was fighting us in the morning. She didn't want to go to school. Both of them experienced bullying. And, you probably have heard that when you don't make a decision, the universe will make one for you. And, I don't know. Of course, my heart goes out to families that have lost loved ones, that lost loved ones during that time. But I also know too, and I also know that things happen for a reason. Um, However, the universe plays this out, that there is, even in chaos, there is some sort of organized plan. And so it was during COVID that we did not hear back from the school, the principal. It took a while. We were on lockdown, and my husband had brought up, let's go ahead and homeschool, because we had talked about homeschool when before we even had children. We had talked about school because we both had experiences that were not always positive. Let's put it like that when you talk about school. And so we did. I went ahead. We went ahead. I filled out the form. It was so easy. And then I started home. We started homeschooling our children. Eventually, I became the primary homeschooler. But then I started wondering about, am I doing what's best for both our children? Independent learning, making sure Kayla, my daughter, she gets what she needs, and our son gets what they need. Make sure, socialization became a topic. Making sure between my husband and I, making sure that they were able to, have friends and socialize. So I started, those constructs started really permeating my subconscious mind. And I guess speaking to the universe, I always thought about that as a child because I would just think things and then they would happen. I would just hold it in my heart. And there's a Bible verse that talks about that. She held it in her heart. And I think it has to do with Sarah and pregnancy. But I held in my heart, being able to know what they were learning, not feeling like I was fighting with the teachers, to a education that worked on character, intellect, as Martin Luther King said, and purpose is what I added to it, helping them to fulfill their divine purpose. And so before you knew it, we were, my husband and I were talking about online school options, and I came across two, and one of them we went with, which was with Willamette Connections Academy, because that really brought. I was down to two, and that broke the tie because they were so involved. Even though there was probably a little bit more work in getting them enrolled, the school was very communicative, the speaking to customer service. And one day I called the other program, they're just like, I don't know. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm going with them. And plus they had live lessons. They had increased it to two per the state, I believe, U.S. Department of Education, because uh, I guess just to make sure the kids are more involved. So they increased live lessons. That means that the kids would be in a classroom with the teachers and live lessons, um, talking to, student lecture, the teacher lecturing, going over stuff, etc. And so they did that, and then we happened to move to Illinois, in 2022, late 2022, actually 2023, early. And I can tell you that my children, you don't realize what all took place, during the experience until you experience the opposite. And so, there were some issues with communication from the start, and incorrect information, and just my children experienced, bullying. My son, especially, foul language, inappropriate language, sexual comments, language, at his grade level in middle school. And I felt like I felt like it was like trying to blame our children than trying to get to the root of the problem. And towards the end, they did try to do some other stuff, and there were some other things that happened. Um, but to make a long story short, I felt like I that my children shouldn't have to suffer. That just because we experienced school a certain way didn't mean they had to. And it was in Oregon when my children were going to Willamette Connections that I thought online school is the way to go. And through a process of obtaining a job in the summer, my children are able to pay for their school, private school, Acellus Academy, that they've been in since November. It took us 7 months to get them out of Willamette Connections. It took us 3.5 months to get them out of this. It took us 7 months. I'm sorry, 7 months to get them out of the school they were going to in the brick and mortar school in Oregon. It took us 3.5 months to do it here because I said it should not take us that long. We're experiencing the same thing, if not worse. And so often we keep tradition, in our background that because I went through it, you have to. And my mother would tell us just because someone else went through something doesn't mean you have to. And I feel like, school shouldn't be all day. Get your lesson, get it done, live your life. My children have been drawing. Cam's been doing um, videos, drawing too as well. And just, I feel like we have more freedom to live our lives. And so tradition should not bind you from individuality. Tradition should not limit you as far as purpose and enjoying your life. My children are no longer having to rush to class, no longer feeling like, they're in prison, but they actually have freedom, and it's at a cost. They paid for it and they continue to pay for it. What's going to happen next year? I don't know, but I know the things I stand for. I know I stand for balance and flexibility. I stand for freedom. I stand for intellect, character, and purpose. And it's kind of hard to really teach it if you're not um, if you have not set up that environment, that culture that enables children to develop character and integrity and intelligence and purpose. It's kind of hard to do that. And so even my son said, "Mom, this is how you inspire people. You give them things, you praise them. You don't tell them they should be ashamed of themselves." So I want you to think about what traditional experience or event are you dealing with that you feel limited in? You feel like you can't be yourself. You feel like um, that you have more limitations than you do freedom. And how can you increase your freedom? How can you become more of who you are, those desires in your heart? And as parents, how can we do that for our children and do that for ourselves? Whether it's working from home, because COVID changed a lot of stuff. I was reading an article today how many people really, examine their relationship with their jobs, their employers, and kids are examining their relationship with schools. What can we do differently to help people become the best version of themselves, to live their best lives? What can we do for our children? Because we set the example. And somehow I set the example of what school should be and what it shouldn't be by taking them out of a school that um, they felt was not bringing out the best in them. They didn't feel connected. They didn't feel like they had freedom. Like my daughter said, she didn't feel like anybody cared for her when we're here in Illinois. So just thought I would pose that question, and I'll put several links. I have a newsletter that I've started up, Notes on Life, that I'm sharing my mother's life principles that have helped me to build the kind of character and moral strength to transcend a lot of my experiences and not fall in the potholes of of those potential traumatic experiences. So I'm sharing those with you in weekly empowering, inspiring messages and achieving your overall health. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend, a good Sunday, however you celebrate this weekend. Because it's to me, it's not about religion, but it's more about freedom. It's more about having a relationship with our Creator, whatever you may call Him. I feel like, or call it. I feel like it's. Do you believe in evil or do you believe in good? Do you believe in building one another? Do you believe in unity? Do you believe in equality? Do you believe in freedom? So that's where it boils down to me. Um, and I hope that whatever it is that you need to do today, whatever you need to get rid of, that you will do so in such a way that it really brings out the best in you and that it continues you on the cycle of creating a generational love. I'll talk to you guys soon.